All right, I just want to say thank you guys for just showing up. I know everybody partied very hard last night, so I love you guys. So I'm Haijun from DGP lab at the University of Toronto, and this is the work that I did with Bruno and my supervisor, Daniel Wigdor. So as a grad student, what happens a lot is, especially if you know how to use Illustrator and Photoshop, is you always are asked by others to do design for them, and mostly from your supervisor. And in this case, Daniel Wigdor wants me to adjust the layout of this design and use more East color. So why not, right? Because I usually am okay with this kind of stuff because I can practice my artistic skills. So I grab Illustrator and then I start to work on my design. Now because I need to, oh, there's a, just give me a minute. There we go, okay. So I grab Illustrator and work on my design. And because I need to change the layout of the egg, right, and I probably have to overlap them for a few times. So I better group them right now so that I can move them. And if you don't do that, you just end up always selecting the egg again, and that is a nightmare. So now I'm satisfied with the overall layout, and I want to move this flower a little bit to the lower right. So I want to select this flower, but the problem is it's already grouped. So I have to double click first to get into the group, and then click again to select that object. And this is an easy example, but imagine you have a multi-level group. You have to click all the time or fire up layer panel to select the objects. So alternatively, I can use a different selection tool, which is direct selection tool, which lets me to select the points or the path. But then the problem is you run into the problem of only selecting the points but not the entire object. So you just sort of like deform this object in this weird way. So I usually play safe. That means I just ungroup them so that I can use normal selection tool to select that object. So in this case, I can select this object. But the problem is, if this is a strategy you take, you ended up always grouping and ungrouping all the objects. But anyway, life is hard, right? So I got the layout correctly. Now I want to use more Easter egg. So I start to select the objects with to replace the color that I want. And I hold my shift key to make this multi-selection. And if you had just had a coffee and you got shaky hands and you slide your finger off the shift key, you lost your selection. And what you can do is just, start from the beginning and again hold the shift key and do this selection one more time. But this time really stressful and really careful. So just bear with me. So I got this selection and I can start to change the color. But I also want to replace the other object with the same color, to replace the color with a different one so that I can, be more colorful in this design. So next, I want to change the stroke width of these two objects. And I can select them and then go to this text box, give it a little bit higher value. But then I realized all the stroke width in the bottom right Easter egg is too thick compared to the stroke width I have on top. So what I want to do is I want to turn down all the stroke width value a bit for all the objects inside this Easter egg. So I select all of them, and then I want to change the value, and I don't have anything here, right? That's because in my selection I have two different stroke values. And I don't know about you, but I got lost for a second because I don't know what values I was using, right? Was it 1 pixel or 2 pixel? So I paused a second or two and then started playing with new values. And tried 1 point, and it's too thin, and then I use 2 point, looks good. But the problem is, this sets the same value for the entire selection. And remember what I just did for the two green objects? I have to reselect them and give them a higher value again. So this just happened, very often, like you have to switch between a subset of the selection and the entire selection. So now I got the stroke width. I want to move on to the fill color. So I want to reuse some fill colors I already have in this design, for example, this object. And because I know there is this eyedropper tool, so I grab the eyedropper and click that object. And that is not what I want, because eyedropper copies everything, and all I want is a fill color, right? So what I can do, I just undo the eyedropper and find the selection tool, select that object, check its value, select this value, make a copy of it, reselect these two objects, check the value, select it, paste it, and hit the Enter key to try this one color. And if you want to try multiple colors, you're done. It's just like you will spend the rest, the half an hour on this. So let's just stop here because I really need a second or two to think about what I'm doing with my life. I'm not doing design, right? Obviously, I'm not practicing my artistic skills. I'm solving all these problems that I have no interest in, right? And then eventually you just learn how to say no to your supervisor and, you just don't want to work with them anymore. But we cannot live with this forever, right? We need a solution, and that is collection object. So collection object is our follow-up work on the object-oriented drawing we published last year. And the key idea of OOD is that attributes are no longer numbers, but this object, this card that you can manipulate in a rich way. Collection object, on the other hand, is this higher-level assembly of the attribute objects designed to address the many problems of interacting with multiple objects. And of course, previous research has been trying to address some of the problems. But the thing is, they address each individual problem, like mostly on this, very fast and efficient selection. But then what you still ended up having is a lot of tools, a lot of modes, and a lot of commands between your operations. So the question we want to ask here is that, is there a way to address all these problems so that you can just fluidly work with your objects, right? And then to achieve that, we need to go back to the very beginning of every operation, and that is selection. So in the WIMP UI, selection is just a state, right? You select them and indicates which objects you want to apply the operation to. But the thing is, if you're working on design, most of the time you spend your time on a particular part of your design. You spend 5 minutes on this part, and you want to reuse some of the selections. So what you can do is you can group group them, and then you run into the problem of group and ungroup. So it's like broken workflow. So if you want to reuse your selection, why not make every selection an object so that you can reuse or modify the selection for newer operations, so that every time you make a selection, you don't make a selection for one operation. You make one selection for many operations to come. So let's take a look at this live demo here. So here I have a bunny, and what I want to move the head of the bunny a little bit higher. So I can do a lasso selection as I would do normally on touch screen. So I hold on the screen, I create a collection object, and I can draw with my pen by holding it, and draw with my pen to create this lasso path. But then if you accidentally select the other parts that you don't want, you have to manually remove them. I hold on this collection object again, and I want to remove these two tiny parts. But the problem is, I already draw this path for the head, right? So why do I have to redraw this path? So what I can do is I can delete this collection object. I tap this head and say, I want to select all the objects within the head. So I can hold on this shape attribute, tap on the screen to make a copy, and then I drag this shape into this area, so that I can make this selection of all the objects within this boundary. So I can now move the head up. But let's take a look at the collection object here. It actually has 3 components. One is this collection, like the diamond shape, which represent each selection. And here, where I drag the attribute into is the area where the attributes are used as selection filters. So you're doing this search problem. And then this set of attributes are all the attributes that I have within the selection. So this is your new friend, collection object. Let's take a look at how you can use it in the design of the Easter egg. So here I got this Easter egg again. I can hold on my finger on the screen and draw a path, and I can group them. So I just need to flip this collection card. Then I make a group. Now this egg is grouped. So next, I want to also group the others, flip it to make a group, and hold on this guy and make another group. Flip it. Oops. So the thing is, I can also make a group of group. I can create a new collection object, hold on this collection, and tap this object that I want to group. Now I can group all these 3 acts. So why a guy that usually plays safe now want to make a group of group? Because I have very fluid manipulation of the group structure. So here, when I'm dragging the egg, I'm moving all these eggs. But at the same time, I can land my finger on the screen so that I can change the level that I'm at. So for example, now I'm at the level of the egg, or I'm at the level of the entire group. So here, I'm moving the group, but if I drag my finger down, I'm moving this egg. And then I can quickly do the same thing for this egg, move it here, and change the layout of the entire object. And I can tap on this one, move here, and can move the entire group. So I don't need to do all those double clicks, right? But I can fluidly navigate within the group. So next, I want to change the color. So what I want is, I want to replace all the orange color that you saw with the Easter color. So I don't need to do those multi-selections because now I can select by attributes. So I want to select by this particular color of this petal. So I can hold on this petal and drag this card to the level that I want here. And I can make a copy of this fill color. And I can use this fill color to do a search, and which selects all the objects with the same color. But the thing is, I also select objects in the other Easter egg, right? So what I want is I want to select all the objects in the top Easter egg. So what I can do is I can say, tap this again, drag it down to the level that I want, make a copy of this shape, and I can use this shape as a constraint to constrain my selection to the top Easter egg. And now I can start to change the color. Oops. But next, I want to switch my attention to the other object with the same color, right? I don't need to make a new selection. I can just reuse this collection object by flipping the boundary card, and that will switch my attention to the other objects in the other Easter egg. So I can keep changing the color here. So, and because every selection now is an object, you don't need to, every time you lift your finger, you don't lost your selection, right? And if you want to delete the selection, you can just hold on this card, drag it off the screen to delete it. So next, I want to change the stroke width. So I can hold on this new collection object, and tap on this object. But that will select the entire group, right? Because they are grouped. So how do you select the objects within the group? You can tap on the object, drag to the level that you want, and lift your finger there. And they can do the same thing to select this one. And then 2 new attributes appear on top. It's actually now, because every selection is an object, and it is a smart object, that it will see all the selections I'm doing and recommend the attributes for me to use. So here, I will just maybe use the stroke width. So now I'm selecting all the objects in the bottom Easter egg. But then I want to change the 2 big green objects, right? So now in this selection, how can I change the 2 small objects within the selection? So here, if I'm holding on this stroke width stroke attribute, and if I slide my finger on the screen, I'm changing the stroke width for all. But if I land my finger on that particular object, I'm only changing that stroke width for this object. So with this, I don't need to switch between single selection and multi-selection. I can just, play with the stroke width here just, forever. So now I got the stroke width. Next, I want to try the fill color, right? So I can hold the screen to create a new collection object, and then drag to select it. But this time, I don't want to, I don't care about the suggestion. I just want to select these 2 objects. And I want to try other colors. So what I can do is I can hold on this fill color, and tap on any other objects on this screen to reuse its color. So if I tap this red object, I use the color red. And if I tap the green, I use the green, the blue, the red here. So I can just play with all these colors. Just remember how tedious it was in Illustrator. Well, in the WinPUI. So I can now start to release my artistic skills by just drawing all those strokes here on the screen. But I can go, keep doing that for hours. So let's go back to the presentation. So the key idea is every selection is an object, right? But what I want you to focus is it's not only the rich selection techniques. It's not only the rich manipulation of selection or the flexible group navigation. It is actually all these features are coherently combined within this one little component so that what you can do is you can chunk a series of selection and actions into one collection object. And with that, what you are focusing on is the entire design. You're focusing on designing this particular area, but not this, focusing on each individual selection. And with that, I hope you enjoy collection object. Thank you.
Hi, hello. I'm Untitled, Interactive Media Lab Dresden. Very nice work, and of course it's very practical, and you can really do something with that. That's highly appreciated. But I've just got a question. I mean, there are many, of course, design options how to actually interact with it. So did you just design it for yourself, or did you ask people what they would love to have, like with gestures, or how would the appearance of your disambiguation objects would be, like this graph structure, the constraints?
Right.
In other words, did you do some evaluation or something before to elicit some ideas how users would love to do
so
that?
actually this is our follow-up work, from the work we published last year. So the paper we did, we run a study, and then we got a bunch of artists to come in and try it out. And then there's like, oh, can you apply this to selection? And then sort of like, we got some idea there, but after, so we just, go ahead and design this prototype. But so we just hack it around for, half a year, and then we got another set of experts just come to try the tools. And I mean, the feedback is just overwhelmingly good. I mean, it's very direct. Like all the stuff you do, you don't need to split your attention, right? It's just like all the actions you can just carry out with this, both of your hands with your pen. And they have very nice comments. I just, it's 2 pages in my paper. Yeah, please take a look. Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, Gonzalo Mendez from the University of St. Andrews. I think this is fantastic work.
Thank you.
But I was wondering whether you can comment something on the usability of the technique, whether you used, whether you assessed it with real users, and what kind of output did you get? From
So we assessed it with 6 professional artists to try it out. But clearly, this is a research prototype, and what we focused on is the usefulness of each of these techniques. But we focused less on the usability. But we did ask them, what the issue of the usability is. So one particular issue is that, I didn't show in my demo, but you can actually leave a lot of collection objects on your screen, so that every time you don't lose your selections. Your selection is just on the screen. It has representation. And then if you are working for a very long time, then you run into this cluttering problem. But we have I guess you might get lost in my demo where the collection object disappears by itself. It's actually you group them, you don't need to show it, or if that selection is empty, you don't need to show it. There are many ways to address that problem. But yeah, I have a session in my paper talking about all the usability issues. Yeah, please take a look. Yeah.
First of all, fantastic work.
Thank you.
This is really cool. My name is Kramer Canfield. I'm a UX designer, so tools like this are really great for iterating really quickly, of course. And I was wondering, maybe you said it already and I missed it, but I was wondering if this